Right, Glyn, since I've come back into beach fishing, there's been a lot of changes. We used to use multiplier reels and 13-foot rods, and now it's all these great 15-foot rods and fixed spool reels.
Very much so, Jim. Yeah, we've seen a huge sea change really in probably the last 7 to 8 years. And we've seen an introduction of the continental style long rods and 15-foot, 16-foot some, although we tend to prefer the 15-foot ones now. The fixed spool reels that are available now have come on so much in the last 5, 6, 8 years. And there's another important add-on to that as well, and that is the line that we're enabled to use.
What's amazing, this is braid we're talking
this
about.
This is a fire line actually,
but what is amazing is we're only using £10 breaking strain.
Well, it is, although it's a bit of a strange one. I think it's because it's made for the American market. They put £10 breaking strain on it.
Probably breaks at 20, does it?
It actually, you're not far wrong. It actually, we've done break tests in the shop, and this particular line breaks at about £18, which is the equivalent of using somewhere in the region of £22 to £25 mono, which would break about the same sort of.
But it's so fine and it helps the casting terrifically, doesn't it?
It's fantastic. I mean, it's obviously, as you know, being a boat angler, people have used braid for quite some years now, and all the benefits that gives them. But with the introduction of these long rods and fixed spool, good quality fixed spool reels, it's enabled us to use these fine braided lines, especially this particular one, for beach fishing. And we get very similar benefits that you would get from boat fishing. So it enables us to cast further because obviously the line is much finer.
And the bite detection is unbelievable.
It's the same as boat fishing. The bite detection is fantastic.
A little ling can give you a real whack on the
Absolutely, and you know, sometimes we're fishing short range, but quite often on the south coast we like to fish at long range, and sometimes the bite detection at those ranges is not as good as it could be with mono.
There is one thing though that I got wrong to start with when I used the braid.
Yeah.
I tied on a 50-pound leader straight onto the braid, and I had all sorts of troubles. Yeah. And then of course the thing was to switch over to the tapered.
Absolutely, it's quite crucial actually. If you're using a long rod and you're using a braided line, you must use a tapered shock leader. Yeah. It gives you a fine knot.
And this goes from like a 15-pound line through to 50.
That's right. They taper. They vary, but the majority of us use 15 to 50, but we can do them in 15 to 16.
And what it means is they're long enough that you can actually wind the knot well into the reel.
That's right.
So all the stress is taken by the heavy part of the
Absolutely.
line, and it flows out. Out easily, doesn't it?
That's right. And one of the reasons that you would have had problems with using a standard shock leader knot is because obviously the size of the knot in relation to the very fine braid, when that knot comes off the spool, it's obviously very close to the initial impact of the cast, and it creates a large loop of line which we found creates a rocking sensation with the braid, and that can loop up over and cause snap off on the eyes.
The braid is so limp and the nylon stiff, you've got that complete diversity, as you say, a loop forms and catches on the big ring as it comes out.
That's right, but of course because we're using a tapered leader and it's so much further back down on the spool, it comes up, by the time the knot comes off, the line is tapering through the eyes. So you've got a much smaller knot, so it's less likely to rock on its axis. And B, as I say, by the time the knot comes off, the line is already tapering through the eyes, and therefore it's far less a problem. It's almost like switching on a light bulb. The difference, it's not a 10% reduction. I remember we had problems with using, like as you did, with a standard leader, and when we changed to tapered leader and the braided lines, the problem just disappeared. It almost disappeared overnight. You know, so
it's got to be pretty bad to have that problem created.
Yes.
Perhaps in a windy condition, you sometimes get a loop around the ring, but it's very rare using the braid.
But the benefits that we get from using these braided lines are just phenomenal. You know, the extra distance cast, the bite indication, I mean,
and the strength of it.
And the strength of it. This is incredibly strong line.
You caught up a bit of rubbish and pulled it in.
Phenomenal,
and it weighed about half 100 weight.
Well, I did. I actually, I did off Pevensey Bay Beach. I did actually pull in a net using the tactics that we just described, the long rods, the fixed spool. And what it did do, although it messed up my night's fishing, which it did, but what it did do, it gave me total confidence in those tactics that I was using. You know, the reel, the rod and the line. I walked away from that. Didn't catch any fish, but I did walk away from it thinking, wow, this stuff is phenomenal.
That in, I can pull any fish in,
Absolutely, yeah. It gave me total confidence in the stuff that I was using. So, yeah, I mean, it is incredibly strong. And because of that, although it's slightly more expensive to buy, it does actually pay for itself in a very short space of time. Because one of the worst things that can happen to an angler is tackle losses. Obviously, when you snap off or if you lose a set of gear, nowadays it can be quite expensive with some of the involved kit that we're going to talk about in a moment. And you know, every time you snap off, that can really, or lose a set of gear, that can really cost you quite a lot of money. And what we found is the tackle losses are greatly reduced when you're using this line because it is so strong and because the knots are so strong, and therefore. Eventually, over a relatively short period of time, it does tend to pay for itself.
Well, fun enough, the other night I got hooked up and I put the pressure on it and actually snapped the hook, brought all the gear back with just one broken hook.
I've bent out ridiculously strong hooks using exactly these tactics, you know, the line, the tapered leader, and that particular knot. It's an incredibly strong knot with the line. And like you say, I've bent out hooks that I had no right to bend out really, and certainly wouldn't have managed to do it if I'd been using mono. But using these tactics, it's managed to bend out the hooks, and I've retrieved my tackle. So yeah, very, very highly recommended. Fantastic, one of the new kids on the block, and it's brilliant.